Hi friends, welcome to this latest episode of the Nationalist View. And today we have with us a very special guest, Dr. Lauren Dagan Amos from Israel. Dr.
Nam-
Lauren, thank you so much for joining the show, and thank you so much for joining the show at such a short notice because today the ceasefire has happened, and we are going to talk about this ceasefire, impact of ceasefire, a little bit of South Asian perspective on this, and nobody can be better guest at this point of time on our show than Dr. Lauren Dagana Mose because she is she specializes in Indian foreign policy. She is a lecturer and researcher in the Department of Political Science and the Security Studies program at Bar-Ilan University. So once again, welcome to the show, Dr. Lauren, and we'll straightforward get to the question. So my first question is actually, there are two parts of this question. One is that because Pakistan is publicly trying to claim that uh, it has played an important role as a mediator in this ceasefire between U.S., Israel, and Iran. And from the Israeli perspective, how do you look at basically Pakistan's role? One, and second, especially in context of the fact that Pakistan publicly suggested that Lebanon and Hezbollah would also be covered by the ceasefire, but this was later denied by the Israeli government.
So, Namaskar. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's a very pleasure to be here. So, Pakistan, I will start from the Israeli perspective. Pakistan appears to have been useful, but not decisive. I will describe the role more as a channel than an architect of this ceasefire. I must say that we don't know really what was the Pakistan play in this meditation, except to deliver messages or to give, to give a chair and a table for the both sides. It's important to emphasize that the U.S. and Iran are involved in this meditation, not Israel. Israel is not a part of this deal. That distinction matters because Pakistan clearly gained diplomacy visibility from being associated with the ceasefire process, but visibility is not the same of strategic authorship. The real drivers were still military pressure, U.S. Involvement, Israeli calculations about escalation, drives were still military pressures, U.S. involvement is and Iran's own cost-benefit assessment. As we see in the reports, Trump's 2 weeks suspension fault track proposal mediated by Pakistan, but that does not by itself prove Islamabad shaped the core terms. It's also important to remember that Pakistan did not enter the crisis as a neutral mediator. In the abstract, it comes in with its own interests: security coordination with Saudi Arabia, financial depends on the UAE. For the last 2 weeks, the reports talk about that Pakistan need to bring back the $3.5 million to UAE. The concern about the instability spilling over the Iran and continuing pressure on its western front. So yes, Pakistan mattered, but I will careful not to overstate what actually controlled. And also, of course, the Pakistan and Afghanistan crisis that not a lot of people noticed that, but Pakistan was hit hard on Afghanistan during the last month. And today, just now, I saw a report that Chinese mediator between Afghanistan and Pakistan.
So a little bit more about that Pakistan announced, and it's not about Pakistan now in this question that Lebanon and Hezbollah will be covered by this the ceasefire agreement or the ceasefire announcement which has happened, and then there are other proxies also of Iran. So from an Israeli perspective, so what is the sense which we can get from your side how the Israeli government is looking at the proxies of Iran. So whether they will be covered under this ceasefire, that there will be no attack on them, or whether IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, will stop kind of targeting them, or no, the IDF will continue its campaign against these proxies of Iran.
So I heard before that Netanyahu's office backed the 2 weeks pause with Iran, but especially said that Lebanon was not included, even though Pakistan Prime Minister had publicly suggest otherwise. That is a major gap. It means that either Pakistan was over reading the deal, projecting diplomatic relevance, or speaking behind the mandate it actually had. We don't really know, as I mentioned before, we don't really know. I don't really know what was the real play of Pakistan, and I don't know if they have the mandate to speak about Lebanon also. And this is strategically important because the Lebanon's theater is clearly still open. We can see now that Israel continues striking Lebanon, and while Hezbollah has reportedly paused attacks in line with the tours. So this is not a comprehensive regional ceasefire. It is a narrower de-escalation agreement with unsolved spillover arenas. And again, we need to wait until Friday to see if the meeting will really happen between US and Iran in Pakistan.
Now, if we come to this last almost about 39 days of war which happened, if we look at what are the strategic gains for Israel and what are the strategic losses for Iran?
So for the Israeli, the biggest gain is the operational level. It demonstrates rich intelligence, partnership, and their ability to impose high cost for the Iran's linked actors. It also reinforced the message that Israel is willing to act directly and scale when it believes its threat environment requires it. But Israel has not achieved strategic closure. The fact that the ceasefire is temporary, continued, and does not cover Lebanon shows that the region is still unstable. We can see that the current agreement is a 2-week pause intent of facilities negotiations and not a final statement. For Iran, the biggest loss is the deterrence agriculture that has clearly been degraded, but Iran's gain is that it still remains a disruptive capability. Even after accepting the pause, Iran remains central to regional coalitions, and their wider conflict still affects shipping and energy, neighboring states, and the proxy arena. So as the balance of power change, yes, but not as a final or settled way. I will say that the balance has shifted against Iran, military terms, but the region has not moved into a stable new order. What we have seen instead is a deeper fragmentation and more volatile deterrence environment. We can say Israel gained military, Iran degraded but not removed.
So, are there any lessons also for Israel which Israel must have learned during this 39-day war? If I could say probably certain things which probably Israel didn't expect that it'll go this way. Lessons, because from every war you learn lessons, and then after learning these lessons you implement it so that you can next time, if God forbid, if that has to happen, if a war has to happen or a conflict has to happen, so you can outsmart your adversary. So, are there any lessons overall as a strategic affair thinker you think that Israel must have learned?
I think the real and important lesson will be if Israel will do. Okay, unfortunately, this is the situation when my objective as a researcher and my personality's thoughts are mixed up because we are right now we are in very complex and very weird situation. They told us that tomorrow everything will be open. And for the last month, I've been here in my home with my kids. And, this shift is it's very big.
So I think probably, it'll take some time to process
Yeah, to
the
process everything.
to process
But
everything, and then the lessons will come out immediately
yes,
because the ground is shifting so significantly. So probably
definitely. And we again, I'm sorry that I'm repeating myself, but I really don't know what really happened on Friday, or what really the meaning of this ceasefire. I mean, as I mentioned, Israel and Hezbollah are still fighting right now. So what is the meaning for Iran and US and Israel? But I think that the big lesson is that Israel need a strategic defense plan. We need to define what are national interests on the defense level and in the diplomatic level, because right now we are going to deal with situation that a lot of countries will want our defense
the defense equipment, you can say.
yeah,
Hmm.
and want to learn about more about the
The
cooperation
strategy
between
also.
Israel and US. But we will have countries that they will say, okay, this country, it's unstable. It's during the last 3 years, it's unstable. Okay, unfortunately, yeah. So I think that the big lesson right now is to restruct international interest and defense strategic. It's very important, and we can talk about the Ben Gurion doctrine, but we need to rewrite this doctrine.
So I think, yeah, very well said, that probably new doctrines are needed because it's a new era now. And there is a
Yeah.
sense of uncertainty which is prevailing, in the region, while the rest of the world might be, in a mood of rejoice, but you being on the ground zero. So that's a very important input coming from you, that there is a sense of uncertainty, and it's, still the whole complex issue is still wide open, and there is no final closure which has
Yeah.
happened so far.
Yeah.
So you talked about, yeah, please go ahead.
No,
Okay.
absolutely, you're right.
So now I want to talk a little bit more about the proxies, because these proxies of Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, so they had created havoc in this region, and we have seen basically they have been actually they have inflicted more damage on Israel and the Israeli interests in the region also, and apart from that, even the other Gulf countries also, then Iran directly over the last so many years. And one of the trigger points for this war was also the role of these proxies, which they have, performed. Now the question is, especially, let's talk about the when we look at these proxies. So after this conflict and ceasefire, do you think that these proxies have weakened, or could they regroup and remain a long-term threat?
So this is the $1 million question. They've definitely been weakened from if we could see the 3 years ago, but it will be a serious mistake to treat weakened as neutralized. Hezbollah is the clearest example right now because the Lebanon's front is still active. The current pause with Iran did not close that theater. And we can see that Israel is a continued major strike in Lebanon, as I mentioned before. So that tells us that Israel still sees Hezbollah as an active and distinctive theater. The border point is that these groups are not just extensions of the Irans in a mechanical sense over time. Many of them build their own infrastructures, local legitimacy, mechanism, reconnect networks, the creative capabilities. That means that they can absorb damage and still survive altered form. So my answer is twofold. Yes, Iran proxy network is weaker than before. No, it is not gone. These actors may be less effective as tightly coordinated, instruments of Iranian power, but they can still remain long-term semi-automatic that treats ecosystem. Because the Houthis, the perfect example, I think it's Houthis. It's they did not go to this war. Never, no one is saying war, but okay, we can say war right now. Houthis are not involved fully in this war, but they have a little play right here, and this describes what I mentioned. They have their own ecosystem, their own mechanism, their own capabilities. They are not depend only in Iran, and this is very dangerous. And Hamas, again, the Gaza arena, it's a different story. It's a different story. We cannot talk about it.
It actually needs an independent podcast, basically.
Yeah,
podcast
definitely.
Talk about Gaza, because now coming to South Asia.
You see, I'm doing everything to speak with you again.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. It's a privilege and honor to host, such accomplished scholars like you. And so now, since you specialize in, Indian foreign policy, and if you look at largely the South Asia as well, so what implications do these have for? We'll first talk about India and then South Asia. What implications these, developments have for India? I also want to get a sense from you. There have been some criticism of also Indian foreign policy in this regard, that India didn't openly take any sides, and then there has been a lot of praise about Indian foreign policy also, that that India was basically looking after its own national interest, but more importantly, Prime Minister, this attack on Iran started immediately after Prime Minister Modi had visited Israel, and as soon as he came back, the whole this war started, and the attacks on Iran started. So, if you look at, and India, I can tell you, kind of reporting from New Delhi, that within India, India is largely seen, and there's a general mood in terms of inclination to have a close alliance with Israel. And Israel is seen as a natural ally. US is not seen as a natural ally after the trade war, and after the tariff war, and some rumblings of President Trump after Operation Sindoor. But Israel definitely is seen as a close ally, and Indians were watching it very closely. Indian public policymakers were watching it very closely. How do you
Yes, but
look
I
at?
want to add for
Yeah.
your questions that what about the Pakistan mediator? What's going on after that? The relationship between India and US. What will be the because of the mediator, the Pakistan's mediator? We will think about, wait, Pakistan and US again are much closer than India. So I will answer.
So yeah, we'll come to that. But how do you look at the as a scholar who has tracked Indian foreign policy for so long? How do you look at the Indian foreign policy in this context, and what are the lessons for India? What is the impact on India of these developments?
Okay, so I think I'm going to surprise you. I don't think. Okay, of course, India will look after their own national interest, like every country. It makes very sense that India will take care for herself, because for India there is not interest to go to war with Iran because of the nuclear plane of Iran's. But having said that, India doesn't want that Iran will be a nuclear state. Okay, I think none of the countries in the Indo-Pacific want that that Iran will be a nuclear state. Not even China. Okay, our closest friend. Okay, for India, there is a lot of interest here in the Gulf arena. They have more than 10 million people, India workers in this arena. They are depending on the supply chains of the energy security and free navigation. Every time I'm talking about India, I'm showing in the map. Every time I'm talking about the neighbors of India, I'm showing the map. There is a cross to the Arab Sea. You cannot disconnect the Indian Ocean from the Arab Sea. You cannot do it. So for India, they're coming to this crisis in a very unique situation. As you mentioned, Modi came here, and Israel and India upgrade their relationship. It's very important. And India and UAE, for the last decade, Modi was very worked hard on this. They are strategic partnership. And I saw at the last reporters that when every time Modi spoke with Mohammed bin Zayed, he said, "My brother." I never saw that Modi called to another leader, an international leader, my brother. So it means a lot for the relationship. Saudi Arabia. So in this crisis found India and Saudi Arabia in very problematic, not a big deal, but problematic situation, because Arab Saudi and Pakistan make a deal in last September. It wasn't a unique defense pact, but even only the mention of this pact, the defense pact, for India, it's very problematic, because we know that every actor that goes with Pakistan, for India, it's a big no. It's a red line for them. And it's very illogical and makes sense that the country will have their own red lines. With Iran, we can see that India, they have their own interests, oil and gas, that coming from Qatar, but now from Iran. There's another problematic level. So you see, I said only, I map only the general interest, but it's much more complex. But for me, of course, it's great, because I have more things to write about that for India foreign policy. So for me, it's very good. But if we go back to our questions, so again, India is in a very unique situation. I know that everyone will say, yeah, this is India test, this is the foreign policy test for India. But no, this is how India act in multi-alignments. Multi-alignment doesn't mean, okay, there is a big philosophy discussion if multi-alignment and non-alignment, it's the same. I put it aside, as this is another episode for your podcast. But I think for the current situation, I don't see how India can react in other policy. Because again, India depends for more than 80% from the oil and the gas that India supply. It's from Qatar. It's from West Asia. So they need the Hormuz Strait. They need that the ships will go through. And we saw that during this last month that the ships, of course, moving on, because Iran doesn't want that India will be against her. They also do their thoughts and realize that they need to be good. I don't have another word for that. Need to be good with India right now, because they need them, because they need the money, they need the good relationship. But I summarize: India, they're doing the multi-alignments, but it's not the same relationship with every country. As I mentioned, with Israel, yes, we upgrade the relationship. With UAE, it's from the last 2 years, it's upgrade. With Saudi Arabia, it's complex. With Iran, it's complex. So it's not the same reaction. And this is something that not all the people notice about it. Everyone will say, okay, yeah, India will do it, but no. If you are want to be specific, and if you want to put the nuance in these things, you need to notice that India play in different play with each actor. And this is very important. It doesn't mean that India right now it's under a test or something like that, but after this crisis, of course, India will need to see what she's going to do with US, because as I mentioned, the Pakistan mediator, of I think it was not a big play in this mediator, because US and Iran are speaking with each other. Pakistan, they give them the chair and the table, give them the place to talk. I don't see how Pakistan give US or Iran something, the leverage thing. I don't see that. But of course, that unfortunately, India and US will need to rethink again about the relationship, because for India, it's the red line. Every move ahead with Pakistan, it's a red line for India.
Thank you, Dr. Lauren, for taking time out from your busy schedule and decoding these complex issues. We surely look forward to host you back on our show, and we will be sharing a detailed bio of Dr. Lauren and also some of her works, academic works. So the links will be in the description box, and we'll continue to track this rapidly unfolding story. And thank you so much, Dr. Lauren, from joining from Israel and bringing in this perspective. And thank you, viewers, for watching. Thank you, Dr. Lauren.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.